Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Echo from the Buttes. I'm your host, Tom Harden, standing in for David Howman. With me as always, I have Austin Bundy, Andrew Hazlett, and Ayeb Dean. And we've had a busy weekend in Sun Devil athletics. Most notably, the ongoing conversation. Will Coach Kenny Dillingham remain in Tempe, or will he be moving elsewhere? We did receive a little bit of clarity on this front. Coach Dillingham did have a press conference during Saturday's practice where he addressed his future, and I know Aya has a lot of thoughts on that, so I'm going to kick it right to you, Aya. What are your takeaways from what Coach Dillingham had to say on Saturday?
So even though I wasn't at the practice on Saturday, but getting to follow what Kenny Dillingham had to say to the media amidst On3 Sports rumors of pushing Dillingham to be head coach for Michigan, in which they lost their previous head coach to some sort of who was arrested. So what I would have to say is that it's a positive on my end, to be honest, because Kenny Dillingham loves being a part of the Arizona State football program. He's grown up in Arizona. He's followed the Sun Devil football program throughout his childhood. So I just don't get why the media is pushing Dillingham to be the next head coach for Michigan, in which they also won a college football playoff championship just like a few years ago. So Dillingham has expressed how good it is to be home in Tempe. So I don't think Dillingham is going anywhere, but I expect Graham Rossini and Michael Crow to get a deal done because of what he has done to this football program over the last few years. From 3-9 record in 2023 to their first appearance in college football playoff, they were almost so close to pulling off of the win over Texas in the Peach Bowl. But to see how the Sun Devils continue to fight through despite injuries, and even though they lost to Arizona in the final week of the season, and which they were, I'm so sorry, just cut all this off. So even though Arizona State lost to Arizona in the final week of the regular season, and they did not participate in the Big 12 championship contention, still, what Dillingham has been building for this program is really special. So I could see him staying in Tempe for the next few years.
Andrew, I want to kick it over to you for your thoughts on the whole situation, and it's obviously, in our mind, I think it's the right decision for Coach Dillingham to stay in Tempe, setting aside allegiance for Arizona State.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. I think college coaching across the board nationally needs to be more loyalty-based. You see Lane Kiffin with that whole dramatic stuff. You see Charles Huff is a guy who's been at 3 programs now in what's going to be 3 years. I get the guys who go from G5 jobs to Power 4. That makes sense, but bouncing around from Power 4 to Power 4 school, going around from G5 school to different G5 school, doesn't make sense to me. I think at that point you just want to be loyal. Those are my thoughts. And I didn't think Dillingham was ever gonna leave. He's got his family here. He's at home. Why would you leave home? And it would, I think, take a lot of money and on a couple different fronts, with NIL spending money, that being a lot higher than what it is at Arizona State, and his contract being a lot higher. And a little bit, that's not going to cut it. It has to be a lot, because it takes a lot to uproot a guy from his home where his family is, and that's just the person he is. He wants to be at home. This is his dream job. Why would you leave it? Doesn't make sense to me, unless there's a better opportunity, a better place where you can get more NIL to get better players to make you look more successful. I don't think Michigan has enough of a gap to do that, which I do think Michigan has more NIL money to play around with, but I don't think it's enough for Kenny Dillingham to jump ship at this point.
Well,
Austin,
agree.
I want to kick this to you. The loyalty factor with Kenny is certainly there, but do you see the reciprocating loyalty coming back from the university?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we only have reports that Kenny's contract was going to be enhanced. I know a lot of people were thinking there was maybe an extension coming, but the fact that the university, I mean, he signed a recent extension anyways. There was no reason to add any more term to this, but the fact that the university wanted to enhance base salary and any other kind of compensation details that were in there shows you that the Michigan interest was not just they weren't just rumors flying around on the internet. There probably were phone calls made, and it probably tells you that Kenny was honest with the university that, yeah, I did receive these phone calls. I'm not going to play games with you. Like, I did receive these phone calls. It is an interesting job. However, I want to be here with you. Can you make it worth my while? And the university went back and said, sure, absolutely. Like, you have brought more hope and more prospect for this program than we've seen in quite a long time. So it was 100% warranted for the university to come back and at least make it worth his while, the fact that he wants to stay here rather than anybody playing any kind of contract negotiation games. There are still some knuckleheads out there that are saying that Kenny could still leave, especially because Michigan got the middle finger from Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, putting out a statement earlier this afternoon that he was not going anywhere, that he had no interest in the Michigan job. Michigan's going to get desperate here. They may up an offer if Kenny really is a target they want to go after. But given Kenny's statement and what he did on camera, the emotion and kind of letting everybody see where he stands on this, Michigan's going to have to look elsewhere. I don't think they're going to want to sit here and play any of those games and potentially make enemies out of anybody and make some sort of ugly exit for Kenny Dillingham along the lines of Lane Kiffin if they're truly going to pursue him. But I think the university has done everything it needed to do in the most professional manner to reward Kenny for his loyalty and reward him for everything he's done on the field in just 3 years.
That's the thing too. His current contract, as it stands, does have that framework for added incentives, increasing his base salary. For a point of reference, his contract is fixed at 5 years. Board of Regents guidelines prohibit coaching contracts of more than 5 years. However, there is framework in place for rolling extensions that could turn this into essentially a 10-year contract with years getting added on year by year. The current contract was set to expire at the end of the 2029 season, and with Coach Dillingham making $5.8 million this year in base salary, he was the number 2 highest paid coach in the Big 12 Conference. Really getting that payday that he deserves for his performance so far. Like we said, turning around a team in a program in really institutional crisis. And that's the point that I keep coming back to when I think about it logically, as if I was in his shoes. He's already come back to his alma mater, coming out of the turmoil that was his predecessor, both a head coach and Graham's predecessor at athletic director. Why would he want to leave to go to a program that is arguably in a bigger mess and start this whole process over again? Yes, there's deep pockets in the NIL budget up there in Ann Arbor, and they could throw 2.5 sackfuls of cash and back the Brinks trucks up for perpetuity. But the X factor to me, and Andrew, you brought it up as well, his family is here, and not just I'm not just talking about his wife and their and their kid, and they have one on the way as well, I believe. We're talking about his support structure in his extended family, his wife's extended family. There's a whole structure that is conducive to keeping that family unit functioning well with all the demands of a college head coaching position. If he were to uproot and relocate to Ann Arbor, there's really no support structure. Granted, there is. You could buy the all the childcare that you need, but you're really isolating yourself on an island if you just uproot and take this job solely on the money aspect of it. So I'm sure this is all factors that Kenny is weighing behind closed doors. We're just speculating here, and I'm giving what my gut instinct is if I was in his situation making this decision. Thankfully, I don't have to make this decision. It's one that I would lose sleep over, and I would just say, here, crowdsource this. What do I do?
Tom, I've got a question for you. You said Kenny was the second highest paid coach in the Big 12. Do you remember who the top coach in the Big 12 was?
I believe
McGuire?
I believe so. I did not have that prepared.
Sorry to put you on the spot like this.
But Mike Gundy and Lance Leopold were leading the pack as of last year in the 7.5 to 7.75 range. And then Kenny was coming in behind them at 5.9, and that does also account for annual $100,000 increases in salary year over year. But
now here's a question for you with the Kenny Michigan stuff. If he was going to go to Michigan, obviously that changes the recruiting tactics a lot. I mean, he brings a lot of different networks from the Texas and Arizona area into the Big Ten, which would be helpful. But with Michigan's branding, you also get a lot of access to the Big Ten's recruiting network, obviously, because that whole Midwest area is going to be interested if the Michigan M is showing up on your high school sidelines. Now, with Michigan falling apart at the seams in the wake of the Sharon Moore scandal and everything, you feel like a lot of Michigan players are going to be looking to jump ship potentially, and high up on that list could be quarterback Bryce Underwood. Arizona State is in need of a quarterback potentially. Do you think Kenny Dillingham makes a swing? I'm not saying he actually gets Bryce Underwood, but do you think he actually makes a swing at him?
I think the opportunity is there. I think it's a hanging curveball to throw a baseball pun in there, but I think you have to take a swing if you're Kenny Dillingham. If the interest is coming from Michigan to try and lure him, the opportunity is there to in turn try and entice their starting quarterback to come to Tempe.
Yeah, I think you're going to be needing a quarterback from the portal regardless of, I think I said it last show, of whether it's a guy who's going to be a starter and could win you a lot of games, or a guy who's going to just fight for that QB1 spot in the fall with Fetty and Dyer. You're going to be bringing in a quarterback. Might as well try to get Underwood or someone else with other coaches leaving. I look at Utah, Devin Dampier as a possibility. Just kind of throw that out there with Whittingham retiring.
Quote, retiring.
We'll see about that.
If Whittingham decides to go to Michigan, I feel like that backfires. Just because you got to send Whittingham out into the sunset with that legacy of his. I don't know if somebody of his character would really want to be the guy after the guy at this scandal.
I don't think anybody wants to be the guy after the guy. This is an incredibly difficult situation to come into for any college coach. Maybe Lane Kiffin is wondering if the ink has dried on his new contract and could be looking for a change of scenery already. Who knows? But I don't envy any head coach who steps into that situation at the Big House in 2026.
100%. I mean, looking into how the media is pushing for Kenny Dillingham to replace the previous head coach for Michigan. There's just a lot to dig deep into. Yes, Dillingham has built a home and especially helped turn around the program over the last few years. Arizona, there would be a lot of recruits that would want to come play for Kenny Dillingham, and especially the Sun Devils. And what they've been building is really special. So, I agree with the points both of you, Andrew and Austin and Tom, have made. But I don't think it's worth leaving Arizona State to go take a head coaching position for Michigan, in which the program is literally in a hot mess right now. So I wouldn't take the risk.
And let's not forget the same media that is pushing this narrative so hard is the same media that is going to be keeping any head coach that steps in there under a very fine microscope. Tempe has the benefit of having three of the big four sports leagues here, plus the WNBA, plus you have multiple Division I programs between between ASU, Arizona, GCU. The attention is very diluted from the media. Something can make major headlines, but it can pass out of the headlines unless it is something completely earth-shattering. When you're at Ann Arbor, that is the show, even though they are in close proximity to Detroit with all 4 major sports. Ann Arbor kind of exists in its own isolated bubble as far as the media goes. So any coach that goes in there, if you have back-to-back seasons with 2 losses, carrying the expectation of not just competing for a conference championship, but competing for a college football playoff berth every single season, the leash is going to be extremely short for whoever steps into that situation.
I agree.
Also,
That's a period.
let's think about it with their recruits. I think there's going to be a lot of players who have experienced their first winter in Michigan who may look at Tempe in 82 degrees in the middle of December and find that a little bit more desirable to want to come down and play for Dillingham.
I got to tell you, I was wearing a t-shirt and shorts all day today, so there's absolutely no problem with Arizona in the winter. You don't have to shovel sunshine. It's that's my recruiting pitch to anybody who happens to listen. Take that as you will.
You know, as an Arizonan who used to live in the snow throughout the childhood, fun fact, I used to live in Mount Jordan for only 3 years, and whenever it's a winter, there would be like tons of snow. And then when I moved back to Arizona like a decade ago, it feels really nice not having to worry about the heavy snow. Yes, it can be fun playing in the snow, but it's just better to have like more of a vibe when it comes to the winter. So I have to add in that as well.
I like to look at the snow on my Instagram reels while I'm sipping something cold poolside.
Yes.
And if you do miss the snow, there's a 2-hour drive up to Flagstaff. There's skiing up there. If you really miss it so bad, you can always go up there. That's something that I would imagine Dillingham
sure.
pitches to recruits.
Well, isn't Camp T's not too far where it could get snow at some point during the year, right?
Yeah, snow does extend down to that level. It can get anywhere from light dustings to a couple inches, depending on the storm. I've even seen snow down to as low as 2,000 feet out in the superstitions. So there's our recruiting pitch for anybody who does happen to catch this show and is considering a move to Tempe. But
I remember Coach Dillingham once showed an AI video of like this beautiful lake with mountains and saying, "Oh yeah, this is Tempe Town Lake" on his like Instagram story or something like that.
He's using the Levine Beach Chamber of Commerce marketing. Shout out to our friend of the show, Rez Devil, and the Levine Beach Chamber of Commerce. But moving on from football talk, we did have some athletics in action this weekend. 2 very exciting, very tight basketball games, one each on the men's and women's side. Men's was in action on Saturday night against Santa Clara up in Las Vegas, pulling out an 82-79 nail-biter win. I want to kick it to you as our expert. What did you see in this game? What stood out to you?
So Bobby Hurley's ejection has definitely fired up the Sun Devils. So to see how they've gotten back to the game, not only by changing their game plan, but also taking a win in the thrilling style, that's the Sun Devils way. You know, what I'm more impressed is how they won, especially after Bobby Hurley got ejected. I mean, there is that technique, which is don't poke the bear. So, what a gritty win by the Sun Devils, the men's basketball team. I mean,
did we have a Bobby ejection yet this season? I feel like we were due for an ejection game.
I don't poke the bear. It looks like it might be due for one.
But this team was down 55-38 at the half and just poured it on in the second half.
Literally, that's what's impressive.
We talk about it all the time, but Austin, is this team showing the right signs leading into Big 12 play?
The right signs, absolutely. You're looking at their perseverance. You're looking at how they respond to adversity. They're showing signs that we haven't seen from this team since probably the Remy Martin era. And I'm not saying they're going to go on a run like that team because I think that team was a whole lot more talented. But entering Big 12 play, I now have higher expectations. I now have expectations that they're going to be able to at least hang with everybody who is not ranked in the Big 12. I will go into every conference game where it is not a ranked team they're going up against with an expectation that they should be at least competitive, if not win those games. And I'll give them the benefit of the doubt against the ranked teams because I haven't seen enough to show that they really can compete with a top 25 team just yet. But just to set the bar somewhere realistic, I want to see this team go into every game where they're not playing a ranked opponent and win those games. And you will finish in a decently good spot in the Big 12 if you're able to do that, considering I believe they're only playing, half a dozen games against ranked teams this year, at least in the Big 12. But even with a couple of those, you can pull off an upset or two if you're going to be playing the way they were playing in this non-conference slate. Granted, Santa Clara, you give up that big of a lead, you spot a team a 20-point or 15-point lead at halftime, someone in the Big 12 is probably not going to cough that up as easily. And I'd like to see them be able to play how they did in the second half for a full 60 minutes. If they can do that, then there's going to be no problems.
Well, Austin, I'll keep this question to you. I was going to kick it to Andrew, but I'll let you take the lead on this one. Next game is against number 25 ranked UCLA. Can the Sun Devils hang with the former Pac-12 foes?
I'd like to say yes, but I feel like we're going to see a similar first half as we did against Santa Clara. And like I just said, I don't think a team in the top 25 or even a team in the Big 12 period is going to cough up that big of a lead in the second half. So I need to see the Sun Devils go into half. If they're going to be behind, I need to see the Sun Devils go into half down single digits. Anything above that, it's probably going to be too difficult to come back because Mike Cronin is an all-star coach in college basketball. He knows how to coach games when he's got the lead. He knows how to coach games when he's got a deficit. And I do not see the Sun Devils winning against UCLA. I would like them to stay within single digits deficit if possible. That will show me that they have some sort of grit, some sort of ability to play with the big boys. And again, that's where I lower the bar to beating non-ranked teams. If you can beat non-ranked teams, you're going to win a majority of your games this season. And that's really all you can ask of this team, especially with a Bobby Hurley who has nothing to lose at this point, considering he's on his last year of his contract. He's probably not returning next year. I don't see them beating UCLA, but I'd like them to make it competitive.
This is a UCLA team that will come into this game having lost 2 of their last 5. Granted, the most recent game was against number 8 Gonzaga, who the Sun Devils lost to earlier this season. But also standing out to me is a loss to California in Berkeley on November 25th, an 8-point loss. Now this, it'll be interesting. That's just going to be my evaluation on this. Andrew, I want to kick this one to you. The Sun Devils received 2 votes in the most recent AP poll. How close do you think they can get with this comeback win against Santa Clara? And it's certainly not enough to climb into the top 25, but do you think there's going to be a little more respect coming to the Sun Devils from the AP voters?
Yeah, I think there will be, just because wins are wins. I think you'll see that number substantially increase, climb up those teams that received votes, a good portion, I would say.
As we said, coming up on December 17th is that next matchup at Pauley Pavilion in Los Angeles. It'll be an interesting road for the Sun Devils before Big 12 play starts. Moving on to women's basketball, just wrapped up today an overtime thriller against Oregon State up on the road, 55-53 final with the game-winning shot with 16 seconds to play. Aya, go ahead and take it away. Your biggest takeaways from tonight's win, or this afternoon's win, I should say.
So basically, last year POA, one of the transfers they acquired through the portal has been a major difference maker at the point guard position. I mean, she drilled a huge 3-pointer to hand the lead to the Sun Devils, and then she basically contributed on the defensive end, like she possibly drew the charge, leading to a Sun Devils win. Last year, Poa, she has been unbelievable on both ends of the court. I mean, Molly Miller, though, what she's been cooking, like what she's been doing as head coach, is really special as well. Like transferring from Grand Canyon to Arizona State, that's definitely money-making decision here. Like that's huge. And to see Luisa Carrera and McKenna Brackens contributing as front court duo, I mean, this is what stands out to me about the Sun Devils women's basketball team. They keep on pushing, they keep on fighting, they keep on defending. Like, this Sun Devils team never gives up. And they also had 13 steals in the win. Like, guys, this is unbelievable. Like, I could see the Sun Devils participating in an NCAA tournament if they continue to play like this, and this might be one of their best seasons in program history. Not to mention that they have surpassed last season's total wins. They had 10 wins, now they have 12, and 0 losses. Like, wow. What a big turnaround by the Sun Devils women's basketball team. Not to mention that they're going to start the conference play against Colorado on Sunday. It's going to be really interesting to see how it all translates into conference play, for sure.
Austin, I'm looking up and down the AP poll on the women's side, and I do not see Arizona State listed anywhere receiving votes in the top 25. What does Molly Miller have to do to be able to get some respect for these women?
I wouldn't necessarily put anything on Molly Miller's shoulders here. I think it just comes down to the type of scheduling that the program did ahead of Molly Miller getting here to Tempe. Yes, they're 12-0, but when you look at the quality of their schedule, UNLV is probably one of their best wins, and that's about it. So I think the AP voters are looking at this and saying, congratulations, you're 12-0, but also, what else have you done to really prove that you are a top program in the nation here? I think once you get to Big 12, let's say the Sun Devils are undefeated going into conference play. That's when I think the AP will start to pay attention, because the moment they beat a single Big 12 team, whoever that first opponent is on their schedule, that's the moment I think the AP voters are finally like, okay, now we can start considering and voting and ranking you right around the bottom of that list there, because now you're starting to beat higher quality opponents. Now you're starting to prove that this is legit. Obviously, we're Sun Devil fans here, so we already believe it's legit. But when you're an AP voter and you're anybody else who's looking from the outside in, there's always skepticism around Tempe and any of Arizona State's programs. Nobody typically believes that ASU has the quality that they have until they have surprised everybody and beaten a program or a team that would have been an unexpected loss on their resume. And whereas the rest of us are sitting here like, well, we tried to tell you so. We tried to tell you that we were coming. I think give it some time. Even if the Sun Devils do lose a game or two before they go to conference play, I think once we get to February, and if they continue to be consistent in winning and consistent in beating high quality teams, the moment they beat a ranked team is the moment they're gonna enter the poll. I think if they're not in the poll by the time they start conference play, the moment they beat a ranked team is the moment they enter the top 25.
Andrew, we're looking at the schedule, and there is only one non-conference game remaining coming up on Tuesday at Gonzaga before opening conference play at home against Colorado. Does Gonzaga give that high quality of a chance to be that last prove yourself matchup before conference play, or what do you see in that upcoming slate?
Yeah, looking at Gonzaga, obviously another group of 5 school. So with that, you can only prove so much from playing group of 5 schools. Just playing another one probably isn't going to move the needle for AP voters. A group of 5 schools don't And if the needle hasn't been moved by now, which it hasn't, this isn't going to change things for the AP voters, at least in the short term.
I agree.
Well, we'll still keep waving the flag for women's basketball to get that visibility and get their recognition. Again, Gonzaga on Tuesday on the road before hosting Colorado to open Big 12 play on Sunday. The men of hockey went up to Duluth for a very important road series in NCHC play. Did come away with a split, losing 3-1 on Friday night before, in my opinion, having the most complete game of the season with a win on Saturday, winning 6-3 behind a hat trick by Bennett Shimmick. Andrew, I'll go to you to lead this one off. What did this weekend show you from the team, and what pieces are in place to go into this holiday break before coming back against Dartmouth right after Christmas?
It showed me a lot from this series. The fact that they were able to win on Saturday after getting just bombarded by the plant Sugar Bay line. Friday line just shows this team can adjust, and that's what they've been doing all year. That's 4 straight Saturdays in a row where the Sun Devils have won. Their last Saturday loss, I believe, was the Colorado College series, and that was the game that they won in overtime on the Friday, in the shootout rather, on the Friday, before dropping the Colorado College game, and then beating Nodak in their place after losing on Friday, then coming home, beating Denver after losing Friday, and then last week, before this week, defeating Ohio State twice in overtime, and then that just shows that they can adjust well. That's what I've been seeing, which is a concern if we're talking about this still down the road in February, March, when it's tournament time and you are only playing teams once when in these single elimination games where you can't adjust on Saturday because you're going home if you lose the Friday or the first game or whatever. So that's something I'm not concerned about yet, but could be concerned if this keeps going forward. You said if Saturday's game was the most complete game in your opinion, Tom. I would agree, but there's still a few things I want to take away from Saturday's game. Not much scoring outside the top line from the offense. In particular, yes, defenseman Justin Kipke got his first career NCAA goal, which is much needed as the defense only has 2 goals this season. That's something that you'd like to have a little bit higher at this point. But with that, that's something I want to see. And then I just don't think Sam Urban's going to be the guy going forward. Yes, he did get the win, but I feel like Hasley's performance was still better of the 2 nights at the end of the day. They are both very good. Samuel Urban is very promising. He will be the guy in a few years. He just isn't there yet, and that's not a concern unless Powers just plays him game in, and the results don't change. He is good, but I just don't think he is good enough at this point in time. Which obviously he can get better, but yeah. Final point for me, just the top line. I feel like this might be a whether you win or lose based on how good that they do, because we saw only 3 shots from that line Friday night, all coming from Potter, and lost, versus the 5 goals from that line on Saturday, and they won. I've noticed in the last 7 games where ASU is 5-2, Colin Potter scored a goal in the 5 games they won, hasn't scored in the 2 that they lost. Just an interesting note there. I feel like ASU might be too reliant on the top line eventually.
And that is something that Coach Powers has been very very vocal about in post-game comments about needing to diversify the scoring and get a lot more offensive help top down through through all four lines. I do want to turn back to the goaltending, though. Austin, we talked about how Samuel Urban got the start on Saturday after Connor Hasley started the previous 4 straight games. Do you think that was the right move to give Urban the net on Saturday and try and boost his confidence a little bit, get his competitive edge back?
Well, had they lost, I think a lot of people would be telling you it was the wrong move. But since they won, you're going to say it's the right move, obviously. But when you go and look at the numbers, I mean, Urban gives up 3 goals, whereas Hasley gives up 1. Like Andrew said, that's a better performance overall, like just from an objective point of view. However, the fact that his teammates were able to give him some run support every time there was a mistake should boost his confidence enough to show that, hey, as much as you gave up 3 goals, you gave up more goals than the guy the previous night. You're not going to impact his... I don't know if I even want to call it confidence. I don't think you want to it's going to impact just his ability to take the ice and give you everything that you need. And I'm realizing now I misspoke. They lost on Friday night, so they both gave up 3 goals. Hasley gave up 3, and so did Urban. But I think it was the right choice to split just because you want to know what you have. Let's say there's an injury and Hasley goes down. You want to know what you have in the backup. You don't want to leave them there sitting on the bench for too many games during the season, and then he's having to get his sea legs under him. And then you're losing critical games down a potentially critical stretch of the season. So I would like to see more. I'd like to see more of this splitting of the net, because especially if Urban's going to prove that he can win big games like this, if he can give you performances like he did against Duluth, why not give him the net a little bit more often? I mean, I don't think you're saying there's any indictment on Hasley's play and by hooking him for some of those games, but when it comes to the games that are going to get you into conference tournament time or potentially get you into NCAA tournament time, you're going to turn to Hasley. You're going to turn to your number 1. That's just 101 in hockey. But I would, at this point in the season, you want Urban to be the one playing and proving that he can be the serviceable backup and he can be the guy if he needs to be called upon.
I will say, coming off of his most recent performance against Denver, he did need a game to get going. But if it were me, which is coming from a guy who hasn't coached hockey and wouldn't know what he's doing, so take this with a grain of salt, I'd probably start Urban 1 every 3 or 4 games right now at this point, probably 1 every 4, just because I do want to keep him fresh. Like Austin said, he did make a great points, but I do want it to be firm that Hasley is still the guy.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. I don't think Urban is quite there at the level to where he can, where Coach Powers can go to him and say, Friday night's yours the rest of the season, like what Coach Pat Furschweiler did at Western Michigan with Cameron Rowe and Hampton Sukinski splitting the series the back half of the season as they went to the national championship. Hasley is still, like you said, is still the clear number 1 at this point, but you do want to see Urban develop and be comfortable to the point where he sees his future in Tempe just as much as Coach Powers sees him as the goaltender of the future. And just to take a look at some of the stats for both goaltenders, Hasley is 7th in the conference with a 2.79 goals against average. Ranked 12th of qualifying goalies with 3.67. Both goalies are 1 and 2 in saves per game. However, that's a bit of a misleading statistic. That's more of a reflection on just how many opportunities the opposition is getting on Arizona State. But Urban is making just over 31 saves per game, while Hasley is making just under 29 saves per game. And then to the save percentage, Hasley ranked 5th in the conference with a .919 save percentage. Urban right close behind him at 7th with a .905 save percentage. So that the groundwork is there for a really solid goaltending room. I think that there's certainly a lot of opportunity for development with Urban, but he does have he's got the poise to be able to develop into a shutdown goaltender on any given night and be able to be that comfortable number one in the future. I do want to take a look at some of the.
I was going to go what you said there at the end with the shots against or saves, is that it goes back to the defense, which we've talked about ad nauseum. It feels like this season, of guys that you don't have this year, Noah Beck, Ty Murchison, Ethan Schmeggy, just those three making a difference out there on the ice each and every night, versus guys that you are put into those roles that are solid second pair, third pair guys, but you're forcing them to play number one. And I think it's just not necessarily overworking them, but they're in a role that they don't quite are ready for just yet. And I think that's why we see such a high volume of shots at this point against both goalies, because both goalies, I think, in the real telling stat that shows how good you are is save percentage, and they're what, 5th and 7th, Tom?
Yep, 5th and 7th in the conference.
So it shows, yeah, they're good goalies. They're getting way too many shots against them at this point in the season.
We would be a little bit remiss. You bring up Ty Murchison. We did not address this on Friday's show, but former Sun Devil Ty Murchison made his NHL debut with the Philadelphia Flyers this past Tuesday. He's played 2 games in his NHL career. Unfortunately, he's still with the Flyers, but did not dress for tonight's game. But Ty did become the 4th Sun Devil to make his debut in the NHL. So very well-earned congratulations for Ty and continuing the tradition that is Sun Devil hockey. Hopefully many more to follow in his path. I do want to take a look at the rankings, and particularly the NPI. And right now, after the action this weekend, with the split at Duluth and with one other game in action, notably Arizona State's next opponent in Dartmouth falling earlier today in overtime at New Hampshire by a final score of 3-2. Arizona State is currently sitting at number 35 in the NPI rankings. Now on Devils in Detail this week, as I alluded to on last show, there will be a new column starting this week talking about the NPI, what that means for Arizona State, and giving just a broad overlook of what the current tournament would be based on the standings in the moment. But the NPI is replacing the pairwise formula, and in broad strokes, the NPI factors in your own record at a 25% weight and your opponent's record, or your strength of schedule, at a 75% weight. Gone are the days where the pairwise was factoring in opponents' records, so you don't have to worry about a team like Quinnipiac getting carried up the standings because they beat Cornell, who beat Boston College, and that win is carrying them up the rankings. More purely based on your own results and the direct results of your opponents. There are various weighting factors for winning games in regulation, home and road weighting calculations, but getting the split on the road is exactly what the Sun Devils needed to do, and that was a rewarding factor for Arizona State in the rankings. I believe going into this weekend, Arizona State was at 38, slipped down to 39 with the loss on Friday, but bounced back up to 35 with the road win in regulation on Saturday. We'll have a much more clearer picture as the season goes on, but it's always interesting to take a peek at where the Devils do sit. Minnesota Duluth, after the loss on Saturday, slipped down from 4th in the NPI to 7th, falling out of what would be one of the top 4 regional hosts for this upcoming tournament.
To go off on that, Tom, I want to bring up strength of record. The USCHO site has each team's strength of schedule this season. Sun Devils ranked second hardest behind the regular Minnesota, not Minnesota Duluth, but the Golden Gophers of the Big Ten. Just shows they've had a tough schedule so far, and I think we all knew this coming in, with the non-conference being 3 Big Ten schools and a good Augustana school, and then the NCHC being, in my opinion at least, the best conference in hockey.
And Dartmouth, even though they did just lose their first game this season, they are still a dangerous opponent. Looking at their strength of schedule at 59th, that is a product of playing in a largely weak ECAC, but they're still not an opponent to take lightly, and Arizona State will be in for a tough challenge going up to Hanover right after the Christmas holiday. Those games on December 27th and 28th. All right, guys. Any final thoughts that you want to add in to wrap up another episode? That's it, folks. For Austin Bundy, for Ayab Dean, for Andrew Hazlett, I am Tom Harden signing off. And as always, give 'em hell, Devils.